Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, sisters and brothers. Alhamdulillah, we are very privileged to be here, inshallah al-Aziz, to listen to a very good talk and to honor our Hujjaj this evening. And before we start our program, I would like our Iraq chairman to recite Quran.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وإن تبدوا ما في أنفسكم أو تخفوه يحاسبكم به الله فيغفر لمن يشاء ويعذب من يشاء والله على كل شيء قدير. آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كل آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله وقالوا سمعنا وأطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. صدق الله مولانا العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الكريم. جزاك الله خير.
Jazakallah khair. Sisters and brothers, in case you don't know me, my name is Zulfikar, and I will be hosting this event tonight, inshallah al-Aziz. Just to go over at a very high level, we will have a talk between now and it will end around 8:30, inshallah. We will have honoring of Hujjaj right after that. After that, we will have Salatul Maghrib, inshallah al-Aziz, and dinner will follow, inshallah. So I would like to start with introducing our guest for tonight. And it is definitely a privilege, an honor, to welcome a distinguished person who has traveled all the way from Chicago, and he is with us tonight. His contribution has enriched Islamic academic tradition across North America, sisters and brothers. Dr. Timothy Janati, he is president of American Islamic College, one of the unique two colleges across North America. The other one is Zaytuna Institute. Dr. Janati is Imam al-Ghazali scholar. He has made tremendous contributions across Islamic philosophy, moral theology, political thought, and interfaith engagement. So, sisters and brothers, please help me welcome the speaker of this evening, who will be sharing his insights and reflections on a very, very key topic that impacts most of us today, on passion to purpose, how to lead a life of purpose, and it makes our life fulfilling. So, sisters and brothers, please help me welcome Dr. Janati.
Should I sit or should I stand?
It's your comfort zone. If I think it would be comfortable for you.
Okay, that's good. Oh, but it's okay if this is working. Okay. I have 5 children, so I'm used to yelling. So I think everyone will hear me well, inshallah. You can hear me now? Okay. Very good, inshallah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. We always begin by remembering Allah, remembering God, whose mercy and whose love has ordained us to be here and has given us the great gift of life this day and all the days of our lives, and has ordained that we be here today. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, and all praise belongs to Him, who is the Lord and the sustainer of all realities, of all the worlds. Wassalatu wassalam ala Sayyidina Muhammad, and may God's blessings and salutations and peace be forever upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad al-Mustafa, God's chosen and God's beloved, the one who was sent as Khatam al-Nabiyyin, the seal of the prophets, to affirm and confirm, to verify and clarify what all the prophets before him brought and taught, and the one who was sent as only a rahmah, an embodiment of God's mercy and love to everyone and to everything. May God's blessings be upon him. May God's blessings be upon all of his righteous and true companions. May God's blessings be upon his family members who sacrificed their freedom and their lives for the sake of this faith, for the sake of standing for justice against corruption and against injustice, and who sacrificed everything so that one day we might be able to inherit this religion intact and have our own opportunity to write a chapter of Islamic history with God's blessings and grace. May God's blessings and peace be upon all of the messengers, those whose names we know and those whose names we do not know. And we ask for God's peace to be upon this broken and bleeding world today. In particular, we remember the people of Gaza. We remember the people of Kashmir. We remember all of these innocent women and men and children and elderly people who are suffering so greatly, whose lives have been shaken, sometimes their lives have been taken for no reason and for no right other than they existed as Muslims, they existed as people indigenous to land that other people wanted to steal, or simply that they existed. May God have mercy upon those who have been killed. May God give comfort to those who are grieving them. May God stabilize the hearts and the bodies that have been shaken. And may God guide us all. May God guide us all to a day of peace, but a peace that is founded upon justice. My sisters and brothers, it's a great honor to be back here. And I'm grateful that my first khutbah here some time ago didn't alienate me from the community forever. So I'm grateful to have a return invitation and to speak about a subject which I think is very important for us to talk about among ourselves and also for our youth, for our children and for our youth, because we live at a time, as we know, a time that we are racing toward an environmental catastrophe, the likes of which have not happened since the dinosaurs were wiped out. We know this for a fact. We know that we're speaking at a time when there are great calamities and tragedies unfolding on the human level. We know that we're having this conversation at a time that is so severe in human history that many people, our youth included, TikTok and Instagram, many people are talking about the coming of the Sa'ah, the coming of the end times. This tells us that we're living in a greatly, greatly troubled and painful time. And there's a subject, I think, that we cannot ignore. You know, the great mistake we make about Islamic history, and we academics are the worst, the scholars of Islam are the worst. The great mistake we make about Islamic history is that we always assume it's about studying the past. So we learn about great people from the past. We learn about, of course, the Prophet ﷺ and his companions. May God be merciful and may God be pleased with them. We learn about these great scholars like Imam Ghazali and al-Bukhari and all these great scholars. We learn about great leaders like Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi. We learn about, but we always think that Islamic history is about the past. And we forget that we are still living in this dunya. And that the story, the history of the Muslim community is still unfolding. And we forget that Islamic history also includes what you and I do, what we are doing now and what we will do tomorrow, inshallah. And so, leading a life of passion and purpose, leading a life or intending to lead a life that really makes a difference in the world, especially now. This is a subject that we should be talking about. Of course, there's a lot of noise. The dunya is telling me like what I should be. Maybe my parents are telling me what I should be. Maybe the community is telling me what I should be. Always the lure of a big salary. I know that many of our children are interested more in having salary and having a nice car and having a nice house than maybe serving the deen and serving the world at this troubled time. So there's a lot of clutter in our minds and in our hearts when it comes to thinking about what it means to live a life of purpose and impact. And of course, sometimes our parents are expecting certain things because they love us and they want us to live well. Many people in this community know the story well of coming to a country where you have no experience, where your education is not respected, where your situation is not, or your personal situation is not held in high esteem. And so many people came to this country with nothing and had to build, had to grow, had to make a place for themselves and their children in this land. And that's fully understandable. And so sometimes we want our children to have an easier life. We want our children to have a good education. We want them to be doctors or lawyers or engineers or accountants, and so that they can earn a good salary, have a good life, of course, contribute to the community, but have a good life. But sometimes our own projections upon our children can get in the way. So my father, for example, I was born in a Catholic family. I'm very grateful to have been born in a Catholic family. But even more than Catholicism, my father was an engineer. And he had one rule for his children. He said, you could study anything you love at university, as long as it's a branch of engineering, it's fine. So follow your heart, mechanical, electrical, structural, civil engineering, follow your heart. And so, of course, when I brought home A's in Arabic and other courses, it wasn't what he wanted for his son. It wasn't what he had envisioned for his son. And even after all the years of my study and my PhD, and when I had my first professorship at Penn State, and I was making, I don't know what it was, $30,000 a year as a tenure-track professor, after spending 5 years for my BA, and then my master's degree, and then 8 more years for my PhD, with much study in Palestine and Jordan and other places, and I was making $30,000, and my father said, you see, I was right. And in some ways, as a father, I'm sure that he felt very vindicated by that. But I think sometimes we have to separate between the wisdom of God and the wisdom of the dunya. So, Nuh alayhi salam was commanded to build a boat when it wasn't even raining. Crazy, right? Ibrahim alayhi salam was told to leave his home country and just go west, where God would show him what was in store for him. Crazy. Over and over and over again, we see these examples in our scriptures and in our tradition of how the wisdom of God and the wisdom of this world don't always match. And so the question of even Zachariah, Zachariah alayhi salam was in the temple. He was old, as you know, and his wife was old. And all their years together, they were never able to conceive a child. So what does Zachariah ask for? He asks for the impossible. Right? Give me a child. And he wasn't even just saying, give me a child. He had a list. He was being picky. He wanted this child to have all these qualities. And so he was asking something crazy, something that the logic of the dunya would say is impossible. And even when he heard the voice, Ya Zakaria, inna nubashiruka bi ghulaman ismuhu Yahya, like he couldn't believe it. Even when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answered his prayer, he was like, what? You mean like I'm gonna have a son? And the sign then was his inability to speak for 3 days and 3 nights. And he just made signs for people to worship Allah because God had answered his impossible prayer. So we are presented over and over and over again how the logic of the dunya and the logic of Allah are different. We know that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had to suffer so much and even be kicked out, really, of his hometown, only in order to come back. We know that Yusuf ﷺ had to be thrown into a well and sold into slavery and falsely accused of a terrible crime before he could be raised up on the throne in Egypt. So the logic of God and the logic of the dunya were different. If we were in Yusuf's case, or anyone we love is in Yusuf's case, we would think, how terrible. How terrible. Because we don't see the whole story. We just see the part. But we don't see the whole story. And so when the hardships come in our lifetime, we often think, what did I do? Why is God punishing me? And we forget that the Quran promises us. What? You think you're going to say that you believe and you're not going to be tested? The Quran promises us that we're going to be tested in every way. And yet when these hardships come, we think God is punishing me, instead of thinking that God is approving me. God is approving of what I'm doing. That God is testing me so that I can be more, I can be better, I can do more, and I can do better than what I did before. And so I think it's time for us as a human family, as a Muslim ummah, it's time for us to be asking ourselves, okay, well, what is our purpose here? Why are we here? Just to eat kebab and have a good life and do a few prayers and then leave and hopefully, leave wealth for the next generation behind? Well, what are we doing here? And the Quran makes it very clear that we were created last in the creation in order that we would take care of the creation on God's behalf. And the angels were given knowledge of all the terrible things we would do, and they questioned God. We all know that passage from Surah Al-Baqarah. And God said, I know something you don't. And he gave Adam alayhi salam the knowledge of the names, all of them. And we must assume that when God says the knowledge of the names, all of them, that included the knowledge of God's own asma, God's own qualities. And this was a knowledge that the angels did not have. And so when God asked the angels to tell Adam or to tell him about the names, they said, we don't know. We only know what you've taught us. Adam, teach them the names. And so we have Adam alayhi salam teaching the angels. And Adam, of course, alayhi salam, then becomes the first Khalifa of God. Not in a political way. He's not leading a country. He's not a president or a prime minister. But he is a caretaker of the creation on God's behalf. And all of us, as the children of Adam, alayhi salam, we've inherited that role. Our job is to take care. Our job is to take care of this planet. Our job is to take care of each other. Our job is to take care of the environment. That's our job, generally. But within that larger framework, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us unique gifts. Some of us are very good at some things. Some of us are very mechanical. Some of us are very theoretical. Some of us have big hearts. Some of us have small hearts. But we still want to do good. Some of us are excellent in languages. Some of us can't learn a language if to save our own lives. So we all have different gifts. And so the question is, well, how do we know? Of course, we're all khulafa. We all have a responsibility. We all have a calling to do more than just make a good salary, to do something for the world. But we have to ask ourselves the question of, what is my unique role? What is my calling? And so as we read the Quran, we read that God will show us the signs that are written in al-afaq, the horizons, and the signs that are written fi anfusihim, in their own souls. What are the signs that are written in our souls? When have we even had that question with our children? I'm the father of 5, and I have to say, I haven't quite had this conversation with my children. What has Allah written? What are the signs that Allah has written in your soul? What is the sign or the signs that Allah has written? And how do we even know what those are? It starts by what we love, what we're good at. What we intuitively, naturally understand. It starts with what we what we enjoy doing. If we're truly living according to what God has written for us, our hearts should sing. Because we were not created to be miserable servants of God. We were created to be joyous beings. This religion, all of it, was not given because God needed any part of it. God doesn't need my prayer or your prayer. God doesn't need my fasting or your fasting. God doesn't need any of it. We were not created to be the miserable servants of a mean, domineering master. We were created for joy. And this is why when we hear the call to prayer, it says, Hay ala salat, come to prayer. Hay ala al-falah, come to flourishing. Like this deen, this religion is not for your oppression. This religion is not for your subservience. This religion is here for your flourishing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is calling you and calling me to happiness, to joy, to flourishing. And so we have to clear away, like what my father wanted me to be an engineer. I would have been a terrible engineer. My parents thought that I would become a priest. Even I thought I was going to become a priest. But God had other plans. Society is telling me that I should be this. I should drive this kind of car. You know, when the advertisements come out for the fall, it's like fall essentials, meaning that you're not going to be a complete human being until you have this coat or this car or this, or you get the best you deserve, as if the world owes you something. The world doesn't owe us anything. So we are here to separate all of that out. And we should be asking ourselves, so what am I good at? What are you good at? What makes your heart sing? And somehow, some way, that is what is going to be the key to your unique service, your unique role in this chapter of Islamic history that is unfolding right now. Just imagine if Imam Ghazali had been forced to be a calligrapher. I'm sure it would have been beautiful calligraphy, but we wouldn't have Imam Ghazali to nourish our hearts today. Imagine if Imam Bukhari had been told he has to be a merchant, take over the family store. He probably would have been very good at managing the family store, but we wouldn't have had the Hadith of Bukhari. Each person has been given a gift. And this is like I tell my kids, it's almost like a video game. We have to discover it. We'll try certain things. Certain things will work for you. Certain things won't work for you. There's nothing to be upset about. That we have to find our way until we find the keys that unlock our heart. And so for me, as a white Catholic kid from Portland, Oregon, one of the missing keys that I found in my heart was in the summer of 1982. It was Ramadan. I was traveling with a Catholic priest in the Middle East. It was an educational trip. And the world of Cairo, which was the first experience of being in a Muslim majority place, it just spoke to me. Arabic came to me as if it was my own language. And then in subsequent trips in the Middle East, living with the Palestinians and experiencing, seeing what they lived through, seeing their plight, living in Jordan, going to these places. I was finding the keys to my own heart, to my own joy. And then I become responsible for what I'm discovering. So finding our passion and finding our purpose is part of it. But another part is having the courage to stand up and say, this is who I am, and this is what I do. It may be something very different than what our parents had wanted from me. It may be something very different than what society wants. Can you imagine what the people of Nuh alayhi salam were thinking of him? Like, brother, like you're building a boat, it's not even raining. Like you're crazy. And just remember that when all of the prophets, alayhim as-salam ajma'in, may God's blessings be upon all of them, they were all accused and maligned for being crazy, for not following the ways of their fathers. And yet we as Muslims, sometimes, in the name of taqleed and in the fear of bid'ah, sometimes we fall into that same pattern like the pre-Islamic Arabs and say, hey, that's not the way we do it. Why? Because that's not the way it was done. That's not the way my father did it. It's not the way his father did it. Are we so arrogant that we think that the understanding of the Quran is finished? Are we so arrogant to think that we don't have a Zamakhshari living in our time? Or that we don't have great, brilliant people who may unlock secrets in the Quran that have never yet been unlocked by anyone before? Are we so arrogant that we think that we know this deen so well and so deeply that there isn't room for new interpretations, isn't room for new ideas that may be even more faithful to the principles of our deen than what we're used to? But we have to engage this religion, we have to engage this life with curious minds, with minds that are open. I'm not saying that we're going to throw anything away. We are people of a tradition, but we do not serve the tradition, we serve Allah. The tradition is here for us. We should be studying the tradition, understanding the tradition, and if it goes against my heart, maybe disagreeing with part, this or that, because I'm answerable to Allah for what I do. And the previous generations are answerable for what they've done. Sometimes we think, how can God use this gift? Maybe we have a son or a brother or a sister who has a particular gift that we think is not useful, not valuable. And we discourage them. Oh, no. As my father said, oh, no. You can write books and study things in your spare time. Become an engineer, and you can study this religions in your spare time. And my respectful response to him was, well, Dad, when do you have time? You've got 5 kids of your own. You're busy supporting the family. When do you have time? Sometimes we have to be bold enough, courageous enough to listen to what God is writing in our hearts and to follow it. And we have to be open-minded enough to understand that in order for humanity to flourish, we're going to require so many different professions, so many different gifts. And even though our society will put the physician up here, no disrespect to the physicians in the room, we'll put the physicians up here, or the engineers and the accountants up here, and put other people down here. But in fact, we are all important. Every single human being has a unique contribution to make. And this is why Maulana Rumi, one of our great poets, said that the world is like a flute. And the old flutes were hollow pieces of reed. And when God blows through that reed, it makes a unique sound for each person. And so Rumi said, everyone should find their own note and not be ashamed of it. Allah has made you different on purpose. God does not make mistakes. One of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Badi'. It really means the innovator. But God's innovations are not bad. But Al-Badi' means the one who creates something that's so unique, so special, so innovative. And so God has created us this way. And God doesn't make mistakes. And so if I have a son whose love is music, well, maybe somehow, some way, that's the gift. Or a son who loves to write books, or a daughter who loves to write books, or a son who's fascinated by astronomy, or another one who doesn't want to go to school but wants to do something amali with his hands or her hands. We judge it. No, you have to get your university degree. Or no, we don't have the trust in Allah that Allah has made each one with a purpose. And we don't say, how can I serve that purpose for you? How can I help you understand what Allah has written on your heart and help you grow that gift so that you can benefit humanity? So these are questions I think that we need to be asking ourselves. And it really means that we need to be questioning the way we treat ourselves and we treat our families and we treat our youth. We need to be open to the possibility that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has loaded our children with gifts that maybe we never had. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has even a sense of humor. Like for my poor father, I was given as a bala for my father, I know, even as he was given as a gift, as a bala for me. And so we were a test for one another. But in the end, it was all good. Because it's all for good. And so as we journey forward, I want us to be, and myself included, I want us to be open to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written on our hearts. It may be that many of us are in a particular profession because we had to be. We had to feed our families. We had to do what we had to do. This was the opportunity that was open to us. But it may be that there's still something in your heart that is crying out to you. It wants to be done before you leave this dunya. We should have the courage to listen to that. And we should have the courage and the open-mindedness to learn from our children. What has Allah written on your heart? What do you love? What fills you with joy? And how can we use that for the benefit of humanity, humankind, at a time when we know so much ugliness, so much violence, so much racism, so much that is opposite to what the Prophet ﷺ and God are calling us to. So much is happening. The world needs each one of us. And the world needs each one of us the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has designed us to contribute to the larger problem of humankind. So as I just share these very simple remarks, and these are reminders for me and for you, I want us to remember that the great mistake we make about Islamic history is that we think it's all about the past. Islamic history is what we're doing now. Islamic history is what we're doing now. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen for us to live in a very, very critical moment of human history. So the question is what are we going to do? How are we going to contribute to the solution, not to the problem, but to the solution? How are we going to be, as the Prophet himself was, alayhi salatu wasalam, a mercy, not just to our own people, not just to our own families, but a mercy to everyone and to everything? How are we going to do that? And for each one of us, the answer is going to be different. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't create you the way He created me. The answer is going to be different, and so we need to learn to appreciate those differences, to celebrate those differences, to encourage one another in those differences, and to join hands and work together for the healing of this planet, for the healing of the human family, for standing what is right and just, opposing what is evil, and doing so in a way that is courageous and confident that God is on our side. Not because we say we're Muslims, but because our intention is to serve, our intention is to heal, our intention is to repair, our intention is to plant the tree and not cut it down. Because God and the prophets, all of them, alayhim as-salam ajma'in, are calling us to that which gives life, not that which takes it. So may God help you and help me as we journey forward, as we strive to have the courage to read what Allah has written on our hearts. We strive to have the strength to bring that into being, understanding that God created us, each of us, uniquely for a reason. And this is what Muhammad Ali, alayhi salam, may God be merciful to him, said to his oldest daughter. He said to her, he says, so what are you going to do? When she was just a little girl, she said, I don't know, Ba. I guess I'm just going to help people. And Muhammad Ali, the champ, may God be merciful to him, said, that's good. That's a good thing. That's a good reason. That's a good thing to do. So you do that in your life. And he lived for that. Every day for the last 10 years of his life, and I'll end with this tonight. I had the privilege of working with him for 10 years and his wife Lonnie as he prepared for his own death and his own funeral. Because he wanted his funeral to be his last statement to the people of the earth. He wanted it to be impeccably Muslim and Islamic, but he also wanted it to include everyone, the indigenous peoples, his Jewish friends, women, everybody. He wanted everyone to be included in that. And for 10 years, he woke up in the morning and he asked his wife, Lonnie, he said, Lonnie, do you think I've done enough? Have I done enough for the world? Do you think God will allow me into paradise? Have I done enough? And can you imagine how the world would be different if you and I asked that question every day? Have I done enough? What more can I do? What more can I do? I say these things and I seek God's forgiveness for me and for you. And I welcome your discussion. I welcome your ideas. I welcome your corrections. And again, thank you for hosting me tonight. And I want to congratulate our Hujjaj. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His mercy to accept your sacrifices, to accept your journeys, to accept your dua, all of your prayers, to bless you and to bless all of those who know you, all of those who have supported you, all of those whom you carried in your hearts to Arafah on this pilgrimage. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make a way for each of us at one point in our life, to make a way to His house and to fulfill the rites and to have our opportunity to make these prayers for our loved ones and for the human family, which is in such a great state of suffering. So may God accept it and welcome back. Assalamu alaikum. So you want me to talk more? Shall we do some questions? Okay, so this is very rare. I never get this from my wife or anyone at home, but the brother has asked me if I can talk more, and so this is an unusual opportunity for me. So I'm not used to such requests, but maybe before we begin, we can, or before we prolong the conversation, I would just ask my sisters and my brothers if they have any thoughts or any questions, and we can certainly go forward. So if anyone has any thoughts or suggestions or comments, please. I'm going to let everyone hear this, inshallah. This will be like a talk show now. Okay.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Bismillahi awwalahu wa akhira. I have nothing to add, but my curiosity is to find out as to how did you achieve all these. You have never given us any practical steps in the past, in the present, or in the future. What are your plans to achieve what you are trying to advocate to us? Thank you.
Thank you so much. One, I've made a ton of mistakes. I've tripped and fallen along, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His mercy always picked me up and always showed me the wisdom. Always, oh, because of the camera? Oh. because always showed me the wisdom of my mistakes. But you know, for many years, as I told you, I grew up Catholic, and I felt that I had a calling to the spiritual life. And so I thought that maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted me to become a priest or a rahib, a monk in the monastery. And I was always thinking that, you know, and I was always sort of acting in this capacity with my family, with friends. I was always kind of a counselor and was always in that priestly role within the family. And when I had my first opportunity to take this trip when I was just 17 years old in 1982, which means I'm 60, yeah, I'm old now. But I was in 1982, I had this opportunity to go to the Middle East with a priest as our leader. There were three other students from my high school. And this is a priest who used to take educational trips with students here and there. And he also loved to go to the Middle East. And so my first trip to the Middle East was with a Catholic priest. And it just so happened that there was a Jewish teacher in my Catholic high school, Lou Schoenberg, who just passed away. May God be merciful to him, who had been a hippie and had wandered the world. And his favorite place in the world were the Arab countries. And he loved his time with the Arabs. And so when he finished his hippie journey as a young man and he went to university, he minored in Arabic. His job was teaching Spanish in my Catholic high school in Portland, Oregon. But I never took Spanish. But he told us, he said, hey, you guys are going to the Middle East in like 9 months. If you want to learn some Arabic, I'll teach you Arabic. So without taking any money from us, in the early mornings before the normal school day in high school, we would go and learn Arabic from this green-eyed, red-headed Jewish hippie, right, Lou Schoenberg, and he taught me my first Arabic. So when I landed on the streets of Cairo in 1982 as a Catholic who didn't understand very much about the region, and as you all know, the summer of 1982 was a very tragic year because that's the year that the massacres in Sabra and Shatila in Lebanon were happening. Israel invaded Lebanon that year. I didn't know anything about any of that. But as we were traveling through Egypt and then through Palestine, and then we took some boats through the Mediterranean islands on our way to Turkey, 2 months, we flew home from Istanbul. We arrived in Cairo, flew home from Istanbul 2 months later. But when I landed in Cairo in 1982, it was Ramadan, it was boiling hot. But while my companions would sleep in the mornings, I would go out at Fajr time and use all 100 words and phrases. And I would come home with 150. And I just had this feeling like I was so alive and I just loved these people. And I realized I'd already spent a lot of time in the monastery with the monks. And the monks, you know, pray at Fajr time. They wake up before dawn for their first prayer. And then they pray at noon. And then they pray in the mid-afternoon. And they pray at sunset. And they pray at night before they go to bed. And so I was used to that already, Fidder, in the monastery. And when I saw Cairo, Ramadan, 1982, you know, those of you who have been to Al-Qahira know that there's this big, busy beating heart of Cairo called Tahrir Square. As a 17-year-old, I saw when the call to prayer came for the Dhuhr prayer, during Ramadan, I saw people putting newspapers on the dirty sidewalks and streets and everyone praying. And I thought, this is just like the monastery, but it's for everyone. For the old people, for the young people, for the shopkeepers, for married people. And I had a love for not just the Egyptian culture, but for Islam. I saw it as something beautiful, something godly. And so a seed was planted. And so for many more years, even as I was learning Arabic at university and going back to the West Bank as a Catholic, still thinking about becoming a priest, I just knew somehow, some way, that whatever I was becoming, that this world, this Muslim world, the Arabic language, had to be part of it. I just didn't know how. And for many more years, I was a Catholic who had a love of Islam, studying Islam, learning more Arabic, and even when shuyukh in the Fiddaffi min Zaman, you know, these lovely old gentlemen in the West Bank, as a Catholic, would say to me, oh, you want to learn some Arabic? I can teach you Arabic. Just say after me, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. And I laughed, and I know what you're doing. I'm not ready for that. But, you know, and we would sit and have tea and talk. But there was this, and I even went back to the Middle East as a graduate student, Catholic, studying Islamic studies, doing my PhD in Islamic theology and learning Imam Ghazali and studying Quran. And I went back to Jordan at the College of Sharia, the Kulliyat Sharia, as a Catholic. I was the only non-Muslim in my class, the only non-native speaker of Arabic in my class, and my professors were so sweet. They called me Sheikh Timothy. Sheikh Timothy. And so when we would stop class and for prayer, I would just sit on the side and they would make their prayer, but they otherwise treated me as one of them. And so all these years, and then I started seeing myself making salat in my sleep. I never took shahada with a sheikh and got a piece of paper. I taught myself how to pray from a fiqh manual, so I started praying secretly in my own room. And then one Friday I was in Jordan, and it was Friday. I thought, oh, maybe I'll go to Friday prayers just to see what it's like. And so I went to Friday prayers, and of course there were many bearded men there. No one noticed me. I came home and I thought, oh, okay, it's not so bad, not so scary. And so little by little, I couldn't hold it in anymore. So sometimes when people ask me, oh, Timothy, you know, you used to be Catholic, you wanted to be a priest. What are the 5 reasons why you chose Islam? I say, you know, brothers, I love this deen and I love you, but I don't have 5. What are the 3 reasons why you chose Islam over Catholicism? There must have been some problem with Catholicism you found. I said, brothers, you know, I grew up loving my religion, and I'm still grateful for the great privilege of having grown up Catholic in a godly home, in a believing home, but I don't have 3. Okay, what is the reason why you rejected Catholicism and became a Muslim? And I just have to say, you know, I don't have 1 because it wasn't my call. It wasn't my decision. Ultimately, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grew it in my heart so that no matter what my father would say or how much my mother would cry or whatever else would happen, it was something I couldn't hold anymore. And so the steps are not the steps that I took. It's that my heart was crying out, my heart was calling. And so every time I had a scholarship or a way to go back to that world, I just knew I had to go back to that world. I knew I had to learn more. I knew I had to pursue it because my heart wouldn't rest unless I pursued it. And so the question is for each one of us, our path is going to be different. And whatever worked for me is not going to work for someone else. But we have to listen to our heart. What is your heart crying for? What is your heart yearning to do? And we have to listen to that. And it takes courage. For me, it took, you know, more than a decade, right? It even took me waking up in the morning, having had prayers, done the salat in my sleep before I even knew how to do it. And I wasn't ready. I was afraid of it. I was still not courageous enough just to say, okay, it's clear what's happening. I would keep it secret. I wouldn't tell anyone. But gradually, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will guide us. But we have to listen to our hearts. And so even now, you know, Chicago was not on my list of cities I wanted to live in or I wanted to visit. You know, I went to the University of Notre Dame in South Bend, Indiana. I did my first degree as a Catholic at Notre Dame while I was thinking about the priesthood. But even during those years, I was close to Chicago, but I never came to Chicago because I never felt like I wanted to be in Chicago. But I came back to Chicago because there was a Muslim college here that needed to be rescued from the brink of collapse. And at the time, my other job had dried up. The money, the funding, my other scholarly, professorship had dried up. And so I said, oh, well, maybe I'll see what I can do here. And so then I came down and I learned about this incredible college that had had so much difficulty, so much tribulation, bad leadership. It closed at one point, and then it was reawakening. So God did not allow it to die. And so then I came back, and I didn't come back to close the college, even when I had board members telling me to close it down. I came back because I know that one of the things that we need as a community, One of the things that America needs is a great Muslim university. I went to Notre Dame, arguably America's greatest Catholic university. And if there's a potato farmer in Idaho who doesn't have any relationship to the Catholic Church, but if his kid got into Notre Dame, the whole town would be celebrating. America needs a Muslim university like that. I don't care about the football team, but America needs a Muslim university that is so great, so respected, so strong academically and in every other way that non-Muslims will want to come and enroll just because they want that prestigious degree. And so the dream of the American Islamic College is precisely that. And I've gone back to read the writings of the founding president and provost of the American Islamic College, a Palestinian scholar, Professor Ismail al-Faruqi, rahimahullah, who was such a powerful intellect and such a powerful man that people had to try to find a way to silence his voice. And he was killed 3 years after the American Islamic College was opened. But the dream of the American Islamic College did not die. Sure, our kids can go to Loyola, DePaul, Benedictine, upstanding, fine Catholic institutions, and become accountants and lawyers and doctors. But why, as a community, are we not growing? Why are we, as a community, not thinking about making history by building up a great American Muslim university that one day will stand shoulder to shoulder with the University of Chicago, Notre Dame, DePaul, Benedictine, Loyola, proudly, as a Muslim institution of higher education that is open to the entire Muslim mosaic. One of the things of Professor al-Faruqi's vision was that this would not be a school just for Sunnis or Shia. It's not going to be just for one madhab, min al-madhahib. This would be a place that would serve the entire diversity of the Muslim mosaic in America. It would be here for everyone. And it would be a place where we, after all these years, and after all these madhahib emerging, and there are more than 4, more than 7, you know. I was just the guest of the Omani ambassador in Washington, D.C., an old friend of mine. And of course, the Ibadi movement, gave rise to the Sultanate of Oman. So there are so many madhahib that we've never even heard of because we haven't studied them. But this would be a place where we could be just Muslims again, like it was in the beginning. When the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was teaching the deen and the pre-Islamic Arabs didn't know anything, he didn't say, you have to believe in these 35 things in order to be a member of our club. He just said, just get in line and do what we do. We'll work on the details. And there are so many ways in which we have, instead of being a community of unifiers, we've become a community of dividers. If we are a people of unity, if we believe in Tawheed, Tawheed as a non-native speaker of Arabic who learned Arabic as a language, I know that Tawheed is a masdar, is a verbal noun, which comes from the verb wahada yuwahidu at-tawheed. It means to make something one or to affirm unity. Tawheed doesn't mean believing in one God, it means affirming, actively affirming the unity of God. Ala wazn taf'il, fa'ala yufa'ilu taf'il, to affirm unity. So that means that to be a person of Tawheed means I should be a unifier. And yet so many of us have become dividers. To be someone who affirms God's rahmah, I should be a person of rahmah. We should be a community of rahmah. We shouldn't just say that justice is only for God. We were created as God's khulafa, which means that it is our job to be promoting justice, not just to be worshiping justice. It is our job to be promoting forgiveness, not just begging God for forgiveness. It's our job to be promoting mercy, not just worshiping mercy. It's our job to be making unity and not just worshiping unity. And the American Islamic College is a place where we can have these discussions. It's a place where we can be intellectually alive. I tell the students there are no stupid questions. You ask anything, but sometimes people say, how do we know that the Prophet Muhammad wasn't just crazy? That's a good question. So instead of kicking you out of the room because you've offended me, let's talk about it. Because other people are going to ask you that question. Let's have that discussion. How do we know? What is the measure? How can we address these questions intellectually, rationally, thoughtfully, faithfully? Because this country needs us. Look at this country. We are on the verge of civil war in this country. White supremacism now owns the White House, even though some Muslims voted for him. I don't want to argue. You're free to vote for whomever you like. I respect you. But white supremacy holds the highest house in the land. Black and white and brown are not like the race relations. We have not learned as a nation how to live together. But look at us. I'm a white kid from Oregon. We've got Pakistanis, we have Arabs, we have all these different people from all these different parts of the world living together, lining up together, praying behind each other, because we get it. God doesn't make any of us superior over others because of our skin or the language that our mothers taught us. The most important thing that differentiates us is our taqwa. Yes. I'm sorry. He wanted me to talk, so I'm giving it to you. Sorry, guys. Yeah, please. No, Sidi. Thank you.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. So, yeah, it was a very profound lecture, that you shared with us. But you are very fortunate also who has been guided by God. Can you tell us how you can help us instill that search? Who am I? How that God has tuned me. You just described about Rumi, the fluid. We are all tuned in a different way. So how can I find that search, that what can I do? What am I? How God has created me? What is my power? Best way I can contribute to the society. Thank you.
No, thank you. The key that's being asked is self-knowledge. How do we know what's written in our hearts? And for me, it took a long, long time, right? But we have to make time for what Imam Ghazali and others call tafakkur. We have to make time. We come, we read our prayer, but sometimes we don't even know what we're doing. It's just muscle memory. So we're not living consciously. We're not making time to think about what we're doing. For me, I'm 60 now, so maybe I have 20 years, maybe I have 10, maybe I have 1. But I have to think, what is the legacy I'm going to live? What is the most important thing left for me to do before I leave this world? And that's an interesting question. When I was 16, I was in a very serious car wreck and was very close to death. I lost most of my blood, all of my ribs were broken and in the lung, and it was a miracle that I even survived. But I knew that I survived for a reason. And even at 16 then, I learned that I cannot take another day for granted. So we must never think, like as I'm scrolling, I do it too, like Brother Ryan and I were talking about how these devices, which are designed to make us addicts, they're addictive, they're designed to make us dependent and addicted. And how we can just be scrolling and all of a sudden like an hour of our life is gone. That's an hour we will never get back. They're designed to do that. And so the idea is, this may be my last day. This may be my last talk. This may be my last chance to interact with my Muslim sisters and brothers. So what must I do? This may be my last prayer. This Maghrib may be my last prayer. So I should pay attention to it. If my time is short, what that does is it doesn't make me like, oh, he's always thinking about death. No, Imam Ghazali says no. The remembrance of death is what organizes our life. If I know that today is my last day, so should I go out dancing tonight? Or should I call my parents? Should I, if there's a brother I'm not reconciled with, should I reconcile with that brother? If I know my time is short, how will I spend that time? This is how we should be thinking. And it gives urgency. It gives urgency to our lives. But we have to make time to really think about what our hearts are crying for. And we also need to make time to speak to people who know us and ask them honestly, what do you see? Sometimes our loved ones are mirrors for us. Sometimes they can say, like, for example, when I came out of the closet and became a Muslim, people knew that I wasn't Catholic anymore. Some people were like shocked, right? And but other people who knew me were like, so what's the big deal? Even priests who were friends of mine are like, what's the big deal, Timothy? Right? We knew this all along. We knew this was coming all along. We knew this was going to happen, but they never told me. So sometimes we need to sit down with people who know us and ask them, okay, what do you see? And don't get defensive, because they may not see everything good. So we have to, okay, so I'll take that. I know I'm not doing that right. I know that I do that wrong. I don't listen well. We have to be willing to hear it. But sometimes the people around us can tell us things about ourselves that we're not willing to see or that we're not willing to accept. And there's a lot of mystery here. I don't know where God is calling. I never expected to be in Chicago. I never expected to be a college president. I'm a Ghazali scholar. Like, I'm more comfortable reading Al-Kindi and Al-Farabi and Ibn Sina and Imam Ghazali with students than I am running a college, talking to attorneys all the time and negotiating contracts and doing all those things. But this is where Allah has placed me. On Hajj, when those of you who are Hujjaj know, we say the talbiyah, we say, Labbaik Allahumma Labbaik, which literally means, I'm here, oh my God, I'm right here because you've put me here. That's true for us here in Chicago. God has called us in Chicago for a reason. Why? So God, I'm here. So what am I supposed to do? Tell me what I'm supposed to do. I'm here in this situation. I'm in this job. I'm in this family. I'm here, oh Allah. What must I do? Tell me. And if we're asking, God will not deny us the answer. And I think for many of us, we know what the answer is, but we're afraid to face it. We're afraid to name it. And we're afraid to do it. Just as I was afraid for so many years, I knew that becoming a Muslim would not make my life simpler. I knew that becoming a Muslim would not make my life easier. And I hesitated, I delayed, I had all kinds of good excuses. But ultimately, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was tired of waiting. And it had to happen. Allahu Akbar. Hayakum Allah. So we're at a few minutes after 8 o'clock, and we still have time for a few more questions or comments. Of course, he's my teacher.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Brother, about this university and your efforts throughout, it has been a constant engagement. MashaAllah, I would like to say something about our responsibility as an ummah, as individuals, and as and collectively also towards other people, that is, communities at large.
That's right.
That's more important. That is taking the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the entire humanity. That is outreach.
That's right.
So please, would like to say something on that one, because we got those questions about the purpose of life, who created us, what are his attributes, and what happens to us when we breathe our last, and about accountability. And these are some questions that everyone needs to know, not just Muslims, but non-Muslims, everybody. And we are living in communities. Just imagine one fine morning, not a single Muslim is here. Not a single Muslim is here in this very community or any community for that matter. What difference does it cause to others? What difference have we made? That's more important.
The question has to do with outreach. نعم. اتفضل.
متى قلت شهادة لا إله إلا الله متى كنت مسلم متى
قلتها مرات يعني متعددة. يعني I never had one day when I went to a sheikh and I said أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. It's just that the brothers realized that I was coming to the masjid and they said, oh, you should give the khutbah, you should do this. And so then I started, every time you do the khutbah, you say, أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا رسوله. So I've never stopped. But there was never a marra wahida when they said, oh, they wrote and I got my certificate. Yeah, I never had that moment. But the question is about outreach. Of course, we need to reach out to the world and not just give shallow understandings of Islam, but we should be reaching out to the world with rahmah, with mercy, with justice. We should be living it in such a way that people ask you, brother, what is your religion? Sister, what is your religion? What allows you to be like you are? The people of Gaza have done so much for the rising of Islam in people's hearts, because people see that even during Ramadan, when they are being starved as a weapon of war, they're still fasting Ramadan. People see that even though their homes and masajid and hospitals and universities are totally rubble, they still line up for prayer. And people see that and they ask themselves, what kind of religion would enable people to be like that? May God bless them for their faithfulness. And so what we need, one of the reasons why we need Muslim universities is because we need to understand the religion that we're explaining to other people. And if I'm going out there with insufficient understanding of the deen that I'm preaching, I'm going to do more harm to the religion than benefit. Imam Ghazali says that the ignorant promoter of Islam does more damage to Islam than the intelligent enemy. And so we need universities, we need scholars, we need people who are going to understand what the deen is about and speak to it in a way that is culturally appropriate for this world that is not understanding. And yet, this world is hungering for rahmah. This world is starving for justice. This world is starving for knowledge. But this is a kind of knowledge that is not just found in books. This is a kind of knowledge that ennobles us, that changes us, that deepens us. So we should not have to just say that, be a poster boy for Islam, say that, Muslim, and, and wear it like we're on a soccer team or something. We should be embodying it in such a way that people ask us, brother, like, what's your religion? How can you, or sister, like, wow, how can you be so kind? How can you be so patient? How can you be so thoughtful? And so the deen that we need in this country is, again, like I said in my khutbah that time when we talked about Islam from the inside out. They don't need to know about the rituals yet. They need to know about the mercy. They need to know about the forgiveness. They need to know about the light and how God and the prophets pull people out of darknesses and bring them into light. They need to know about what is good and life-giving. They need to know about that halal is about a healthy relationship with the animals and a healthy relationship with our bodies. It's not just about how you cut a chicken's neck. These are deep and beautiful concepts that we cheapen because we don't understand them, because we're not educated in our deen. And so I think this is so important that and this is one of the reasons why the building of American Muslim universities, this is such an important project. And I'm not saying that for my school or for Zaytuna. I'm saying that for all of us. We should be raising up these institutions, promoting knowledge, and really helping our students and the wider world through our lectures, through all the things that we do. Because, universities aren't just about what happens in the classroom. It's about public service and about public talks and about book talks and about all kinds of other things that happen. But we should be educating this wider society about who we are, really, and what we believe in, really, and what we stand for, really. The way we know that Muslims live in a place is not because we walk into a neighborhood, we know that there's justice, not because we walk into a neighborhood because it's so clean, not because we walk into a neighborhood where we feel safe. It's because we see halal food shops. We know that there's halal meat available. But Islam, even more than halal zabiha, Islam is about peace and justice and protection and noble behavior. And so we should have the meat shops, of course, but when people walk into a place where Muslims live, they should feel safe. They should feel that these people respect themselves and they respect each other and they respect other people. That this is a neighborhood where people will be welcoming and there will be hospitality. So there's so much we need to inculcate, and some things we need to unlearn. I can remember one of the reasons why I hesitated to come out of the closet and be a Muslim is because at the university where I was doing my PhD, there were so many Muslim brothers who had these long beards, and they would proudly comb their beards and look down on all the non-Muslims, all the kuffar, and feel superior. And I thought, is that what I want to become? Is that what the world needs? This kind of istikbar, this kind of arrogance and disdain for other people? No. This world needs Muslims who are going to roll up their sleeves and say, how can I help you? I can see that you're suffering. So someone comes to me with a drug addiction, instead of judging them, I see them the way Imam Ghazali teaches me to see them, as a doctor of hearts, as a spiritual doctor, a spiritual cardiologist, I call it. How can I help you, brother? How can I help you, sister? I can see you're suffering. Because this is the way the Prophet was sent to us. Alayhi salatu wassalam. He didn't come to judge us. He came to invite us to a better way. We were, as saying the pre-Islamic Arabs, we were drinking, we were murdering infant girls, we were worshiping idols. And he came not to judge, but to call us to a better way. Calling us to it. And so we don't need any more prophets, but we all need to be prophetic, which means we need to walk in his way. And I'm not just talking about the leather shoes and the cane for kids with good legs. I'm talking about, when the Prophet speaks, or when the Quran speaks about the Prophet ﷺ, it's in one sentence, it's all summed up. It's enough. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Ma arsalnaka illa rahmatan lil alameen," we've sent you only as a rahmah to everything, to everyone. So I tell people, before you turn yourself into a poster boy or a poster girl for this religion, you got all the beard and everything all together, just try to do that. Be a rahmah to your parents, be a rahmah to strangers, be a rahmah to people who don't like you. Be a rahmah to animals, be a rahmah to this environment which is poisoned and sick because of what we have done, we Muslims included, because of what we have done to it. We are the caretakers of the creation. We are the khulafa that Allah has placed on the earth. And look at what we've done. We've done all the things that the angels said we would do. So it's time for us to realize what this deen is really about and to start living it. And so when we talk about outreach, it has to be intelligent outreach. We have to understand the deen that we're teaching people about. And we have to be courageous enough to live it. And when we don't, we have to be courageous enough to seek God's forgiveness and to acknowledge that, I'm in process. I'm not like the perfect Muslim died 1400 years ago, alayhi salatu wasalam. And the rest of us are works in process. We have to be honest about that. I'm not perfect, nobody's perfect, but we have to help each other. We have to forgive each other. We have to support each other. We have to own our mistakes. Try to be better. Because as again Rumi says, even if you have broken your vows 1,000 times, don't give up. Come back again and again, because ours is not a caravan of despair. This religion of Islam is a caravan of hope, not just for the Muslims, but for all of humankind and for the creation as a whole. And that's what I want my neighbors to know. Yeah. May God forgive me if I've said anything wrong, and God bless you all for your patience. And I look forward to praying with you and having a meal with you and having many more conversations, inshallah. Okay, assalamu alaikum. Oh, sure, absolutely. Before the dua, we'll ask, are there any thoughts from the sisters or questions from the sisters? To me, your voice is not fitna. So if you have a question, please feel free to ask it. Anyone? This is Nasa Khawaja. She's on our team at the American Islamic College. And so, is anyone here?
Thank you so much for such an inspiring lecture. I wanted to say, what are some sustainable strategies that you would say for those of us who might be deeply passionate, we might be ignited with passion after your inspiring lecture? What are some sustainable steps that we can take to actually do this rather than burn out immediately? We might say that, oh, I'm so passionate about figuring out what my passion is, how do I help the world? But then we might burn out next week saying that I've done enough. So what are your steps for that?
Assalamu alaikum, sister, and thank you. That's a great, great question because it's important for all of us. So what that means is that if today I did one prayer, tomorrow I have to get in front of the camera. So it means that tomorrow I'm not going to do 12, right? I'm not going to all of a sudden be crazy and sleep 1 or 2 hours a night and spend every night in the Qiyam al-Layl until I burn out. We have to just start small and just gradually build it, right? And we have to start having conversations with the people in our lives about these questions, about, what do you see in me? What do you see in my heart? And unraveling, because it's not an easy thing to read the signs of God in our hearts. It's very difficult. And so sometimes we need to have a teacher or a trusted friend or someone who can really help us. And if we want to have that conversation, first we ask Allah to guide us to a person like that. And second, if we find that person, then we can start a process of really looking at our hearts and asking ourselves seriously what Allah has written there for you or for me. And so we need to start having these conversations, but we should start in a way that is sustainable, right? So let's say, I always tell people that if you're just doing one prayer or no prayers, start with one, right? Build it slowly. We have so many people say, 5 or nothing. Sorry, God will not accept it. No. Start with one, right? We'll get it going. And we start working, right? I remember I once had a sister, this is a serious story, sister who came to me because she had a prayer block, which meant that she knew how to pray. She was a Muslim. She had grown up in a Muslim family. She knew how to pray, but now as a 18-year-old, 19-year-old, she couldn't make herself pray. She made the wudu, had the intention to pray, but she couldn't make herself pray. And in a few conversations, I think we had 2 conversations, and it was clear to me that there was trauma there. And I asked her, I said, has anyone ever hurt you in a very shameful way, in a very deep way? And it turns out that the only man that her parents ever allowed to be alone with her was the Quran teacher. And of course, the Quran teacher behaved inappropriately. And there was this trauma in her heart because she had been not only been betrayed by a man, but the deen had been betrayed because this person was in a position of responsibility in the religion. And so I said, right now, you're not going to heap guilt on yourself for not being able to pray. What we're going to do is we're going to get you into therapy, and the therapy is going to be your prayer right now. And gradually Allah will give you your prayer back. Because someone has harmed you, and that harm, that wound needs to be healed. And sure enough, with therapy, with time, the prayer came back. She got married. She's got 5 kids. She's a spoken word poet. Very powerful soul. But you see how we cannot approach these situations in a dogmatic way. 5 or nothing, on time. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is calling us to follow in the footsteps of a man who was a mercy to everyone and to everything. And there has to be some, what we call in educational language, pedagogy. How do I get a person from here to here? And it's going to be slowly, and it has to be through steps. And so we have to be patient with ourselves when we're unable, when we reach those places of trauma or blockage. If we just heap the guilt on ourselves, then it makes the problem worse. So we have to be patient with ourselves and forgiving of ourselves, and we have to slowly work toward the beautiful healing and light to which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always calling us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to be joyous, wants you to be whole, wants you to be flourishing. And the Muslims in your life should be wanting the same thing for you. And if they're not, then something is defective about their understanding of Islam. You know, the Prophet ﷺ said to us, none of you is a believer. None of you, until and unless you love for your brother what you love for yourself. Which means that if you are not putting other people on the same level as your own needs, as your own wants, if you're not treating the brothers and sisters in your life as if their lives are as important as yours, their dreams are as important as yours, their hopes are as important as yours, their needs are as important as yours, if we're not doing that, we are not mu'mineen. We are not. We are not believers. So what do we need to do to become true believers? We need to start treating each other differently. We need to start treating each other with mercy, with forgiveness, with patience. We need to start putting other people above ourselves. Because that's the way that the Prophet ﷺ loved us. And that's the way God is calling us to love each other. When we are caretakers for the dunya, we are also caretakers of one another. And we're doing a bad job of it, I have to say, me included. So we need to, this religion of Islam is something beautiful. And if we are not living lives of beauty, then something is wrong. And we don't have to beat each other up about it. We just have to say, okay, something is wrong, so how do we fix it? How do we fix it? And that should be our conversation. That should be our conversation, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is calling us to falah, calling us to flourishing. And if we're not flourishing, we need to ask the question, why? And that's, for me, the answer. One of the answers is that I'm not flourishing because my brothers and sisters are suffering. And so until and unless I stand for them and help them, I'm never going to be in a state of falah. Because if I'm truly following the sunnah of a man, alayhi salatu wasalam, who was a rahmah to everyone and to everything, That's my calling. That's my job. That's my highest ambition. That's my highest pursuit. That's my highest responsibility. And if someone asks me, what is this Islam about? That should be my answer. God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Oh, dua. Final question. Oh, sorry.
This is going to be the final question. Someone asked question for a message for our youth. One message you would like to pass to the youth tonight.
What is the question for the, the province of Ontario, a lot of my life has been spent in Canada. It's a great country. And right now, at least, it's not under the control of white supremacist crazy people. But again, I'm not getting political. The province of Ontario has the motto, it's on the license plates of the cars there. It's Ontario, yours to discover. My message for the youth is that this should be our motto for Islam. Islam is yours to discover. You might be the next Imam Ghazali. You might be the next Rabi'a al-Adawiyya. You might be the next founder of our first and oldest university in Morocco. Tunisia was established by a Muslim sister. You might be the next Salah ad-Din, the next political leader, righteous political leader of the Muslims. But Islam is yours to discover. The book of Islam, of Islamic history, the book of Islamic understanding is not finished. This isn't just about memorizing what people of the past have said and written. This is your turn. Allah has given you the opportunity to be alive now. The world is in crisis. Islam is in crisis. And you might be the one who starts putting these pieces back together, or some of the pieces back together. So when Allah is speaking to your heart, don't silence yourself because you think you're not qualified. Allah may be using your heart to speak to all of us, and we have to be willing to listen. But I would say to the youth, Islam is a beautiful opportunity that is waiting for you to discover it. It's not, all the questions have not been answered. All the theories have not been fleshed out. There's still so much to do. And so many ways in which Islam now needs to be applied to cryptocurrency. Islam needs to be applied to artificial intelligence. Islam needs to applied to the current geopolitical situation of the world. Islam needs to be applied to world hunger. We need to find creative new ways in which Islam can be brought to people as healing, as justice, as mercy. And that's your job. Allah has called you into life at this time for a reason. It's more than a video game. We need to find out what that reason is. We need to find out what your unique contribution is. And then we need to support you and encourage you to have the courage to embrace it and to do it. So the youth, right? Islam is yours. It belongs to you. It's yours to discover. And so I would just encourage you to discover it and to embrace it as a beautiful challenge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you. Oh Allah, we know that there is no one to whom we can turn but you. We believe and bear witness that you are the only one worthy of worship. We know that you have been known by many names in many religions and through the lenses of many theologies. But we believe and bear witness that through all of that, you are one, and you have only ever been one, that you have no peers. Oh Allah, we ask you to forgive us our misdeeds. We ask you to forgive us the things that we have failed to do when we should have done. And we ask you to forgive us the things that we have done to harm ourselves and one another. We ask you to forgive us all the ways in which we have failed you and this creation, and we ask you to place in us a new spirit, a new heart. We ask you to give us the vision and the inspiration and the knowledge and the courage to become the beautiful khulafat that you have created us to be. Oh Allah, we ask for your mercy and your forgiveness to be with those who are suffering. We ask you to help us find ways to help them. We ask you to help us find ways to help the world in this critical moment. We ask for your blessings always upon our beloved messenger and teacher Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. We ask for your blessings to be upon all of the messengers, upon all of their families and all of their righteous and true companions. And we ask you to place us in their company, not because we deserve it, but because you are merciful, Ya Arhamar Rahameen, to guide us along pathways of peace, pathways of knowledge, pathways of light, so that we may be dispensers of peace and knowledge and justice and light in this world. Ya Arhamar Rahameen, Ya Nuru Samawati wal Ard, walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Thank you all so much. Assalamu alaikum.
Dr. Janati, Jazakallah khair. It was a pleasure listening to you. MashaAllah, the Q&A sessions went really well, and there are definitely a couple of things for me to reflect on. Your wisdom and reflection, MashaAllah, was very helpful, and I hope it helps a lot more people overall. Sisters and brothers, tonight we are meeting not just as a community, we are meeting as a family, with bonds us with our common faith of Islam and shared responsibilities as Muslim. On behalf of AMCO, it gives me immense honor to welcome and recognize all the Hujjaj, all our sisters and brothers who have just returned from their holy journey. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept your Hajj, forgive all your sins, and reward you with what Allah has promised for everyone who completes this special journey in the best possible way with a lot of sincerity, inshallah al-aziz. Sisters and brothers, as a community, this is a time which makes us realize who we are as a community as a whole, what our shared responsibilities are, inshallah al-aziz, between each one of us. We should be part of success of each other, inshallah. As our community, the only way we can become stronger is definitely stick with one path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sisters and brothers, Jazakallah khair for being a part of this evening and being here tonight, inshallah al-aziz. We pray every single